Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start this lesson off by giving all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are firmly pushing the word in sincerity and in faith. Shalom to all the sincere believers. Now, this is going to be a quick lesson just based on this article right here in regards to the people who are panic buying, preparing for this winter storm that's supposed to hit. So through the Spirit, I'm going to read some of this article, get some precepts. Lord's will, you're edified. It says, people are panic buying for the winter storm. An expert explains why we do it. It said, as a potentially historic winter storm has already knocked out power to 112,000 homes, and warnings are in place for some 140 million Americans. Many in the storm's path have rushed to stores to stock up on supplies. Said images of shelves stripped bare at stores across the country have found their way to social media as the storm started to sweep its way east from Texas on Saturday morning, with freezing rain and snow reports in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Images of Trader Joe's stores in Washington, D.C. and Chelsea, New York City show empty aisles. Meanwhile, further south, grocery stores in Charlotte, North Carolina saw an influx of customers stocking up on water, non-perishable food items, and canned goods, as well as batteries. Locals in the area reported that water was sold out at their Harris Teeter. But are people right to stock up, or is this another case of unwarranted panic buying? And what is the difference between being prepared and being paranoid? It says Hirsch Sheffrin, professor of behavioral finance at Santa Clara University, says that this phenomenon is not uncommon in the face of a major weather event or a high-stress situation. Said it is certainly reasonable to stock up for a few days, he says, but once the buying is driven by fight or flight emotional response, that's when it transforms into panic buying. Said there's a difference between emergency preparedness and panic buying, Sheffrin tells Time. Says, so I think that what we would like in an ideal world is that when there's an impending storm, that people engage in reasonable, sensible emergency preparedness. But when fear takes over, then people become focused on worst case scenarios. Says panic buying can be heavily influenced by other people, he says. When people start to panic buy, their impulses take over, he continues. So if they're in a shop and they see that there's some item that wasn't on their shopping list, but they just see that the stock of a certain item is going low, they might think, oh, I better get that before they're all gone. Sheffrin says the best way to prevent actual shortages is for consumers to stop and not let their emotions take over. The behavioral scientist Ravi Dahar, a professor at Yale University, says that the inherent uncertainty of the storm's severity this weekend leads people to try to control what they can. Said people tend to be overly risk averse and have a desire for control rather than hysteria. He says that the risk of running out feels worse than overspending, as people can rationalize to themselves that they need the goods later. The salience in the media and constant weather alerts on apps makes the event seem more scary psychologically, he adds, arguing that people then react to emotions instead of the probabilities of harm, especially as the media continues to use words including historic to describe the storm. Yeah, so it's like one form or another, the media is going to, you know, make things worse. Get in people's head, stir things up, so to speak. Because when people hear that there's going to be a big storm, whether it's a snowstorm or a rainstorm, and people hear, oh yeah, there could be power outages for long periods of time and things like that, that already scares people. But then when they start throwing in words like historic and things like that, it just makes people even more scared. So then people start overreacting, you know. It says recent instances of panic buying include during the C-19 pandemic, and those stories of toilet paper shortages are still salient in America's minds. Sheriffin adds, in 2020, consumers also raced to stock up on cleaning products, disinfectants, and hand sanitizers, as well as face masks. Exactly. So basically, they, the media, hypes things up, and it scares people because, for the most part, Americans are not the most rational people. They're just not. So you use certain words when you're telling people about something, and it's going to cause them to panic. And then in that panic, people are going to be rushing to buy up all the paper towels and the toilet paper and the water and the cleaning supplies and all of this. And if things get too out of control, fights break out in these stores, people get hurt, people get killed, you know, and it ends up not even being the storm that does the most damage, but the panic that can cause the most damage. But those of us of the hopeful elect, we have to understand that this is all the work of the Heavenly Father. Ultimately, the Heavenly Father is the one stirring this pot. I have the definition of panic here. It said panic is a sudden, uncontrollable, and overwhelming feeling of intense fear or anxiety that often leads to irrational, disorganized, or hysterical behavior, sometimes spreading rapidly through a group. It says synonyms: terror, alarm, frenzy, hysteria, fear, consternation. And that's what these people are experiencing. They're experiencing fear because they're afraid, because they're being told that this historic snowstorm is going to sweep across most of America, and there's going to be a power outage for days on end, and all of these things are scaring people. So then people rush to the stores and empty out the shelves and all of this, and then it's like, what if the storm is nowhere near as bad as they said? Now these people then went through all of this, stressed themselves out, and it wasn't even that serious. And even if it is going to be that serious, people need to move rationally. Like this whole just chaotic spending and buying up everything. It's, people get out of hand, People just start doing way too much, and it's unnecessary. But this is the type of chaos that ultimately Esau wants. And the Lord obviously is playing puppet master and, letting these things play out. Because while the Heavenly Father is always ultimately the one controlling how things play out, he's using Esau and the media to, intensify the situation. And it would be funny, not in a, ha ha kind of way, but like just in a realization of how easily manipulated people are if this storm hits and it's nowhere near as bad as the weather people said that it was going to be, as the meteorologists said it was going to be, or as, you know, the media in general said that it was going to be. Then, you're going to look at all those people who were panic buying and spending money that they already didn't have, to clean the shelves so that they could be overly prepared. Those people are going to look real stupid. And then you could actually have the opposite effect, of panic buying. You could have people like panic reselling, taking the stuff that they didn't end up using or didn't need, taking it back to the store and trying to, give it back and sell it back. And that could cause its own fair share of problems. Just mass groups of people just going back into these stores and trying to get their money back for the things that they spent, when they were panicking. So it's like one way or another, there's going to be chaos. And that is the name of the game here in America specifically. Psalms 83:14. As the fire burneth a wood, and as the flame setteth the mountains on fire. Verse 15. So persecute them with thy tempest, and make them afraid with thy storm. And that's clearly what the Lord is doing. He's making these people afraid. That's why they're panic buying, because they're scared. Because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know when the next time they're going to be able to go to the store is going to be. A lot of scenarios are running through their head. So they're panicking. They're scared. They're in fear. And they're reacting very emotionally off of that fear. And 9 times out of 10, in one way or another, reacting out of fear and not out of logic causes more harm than good. Like it said in the article, there's nothing wrong with, stocking up some extra food, extra water, extra cleaning supplies, extra toilet paper and paper towels. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you start wiping out shelves, leaving shelves completely barren because you didn't panicked so much, that's when it becomes a problem. When the mass hysteria kicks in and people are fighting each other in these stores over food and over different supplies, and people start getting hurt and killed, that's when it's a problem. That's when people are no longer being logical, they're being emotional. And usually when people start reacting out of their emotions, it doesn't end well. So, for all you sincere brothers and sisters, be wise, be rational, be logical. You want to stock up on some extra supplies, by all means, Just don't overdo it. Because at the end of the day, we have to trust in the Lord to protect us and to provide for us. Stocking up on, some extra stuff, like they said in the article, that's not going to hurt. Just don't overdo it like these people who are out here panic buying and, spending money, like I said, that they don't have. They already don't have this money to spend, you know. So, that's how us of the hopeful elect are supposed to move. Logically, rationally, trusting in the Lord, moving by faith, you know. That's how we're supposed to move. We're not just supposed to panic and react. Because that's how these carnal, simple-minded people are moving. And that's not going to end well for them. It's okay to have a rational amount of fear and worry. That's just how it is. That's just human nature. But you can overdo it. And that's what most of these people are doing. They're overdoing it. They're letting their fear and their emotions control their actions. And those of us of the hopeful elect, we can't be like that. Because that's exactly how you get caught up. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. In closing, I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash, the Wadi Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, for putting His Spirit on me to do this lesson. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are fervently pushing the word in sincerity and in faith. Shalom to all the sincere believers. Hope you all stay strong, stay safe, stay fervent, stay circumspect, stay prayed up. And Adawan Ratazah. Till next time, Shalom.